nudge me if you need help. Say nudge me if you need me. We're going to get earpieces. We can talk in our earpieces. I like it. I gotcha.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council Education Committee to order. First duty roll call. Jody Harbert here. Gary Bonewall.
Here.
John Creech.
Here.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Jeff Hayes. Robert Nappage.
Here.
Greg LeMay.
Here.
Lori Lefevers. Oscar Salazar.
Here.
Lance Villers. Kelly Weller.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Nice to see everybody here this morning. Boy, we've had a lot go on since our last meeting. Just like to take a moment to think about what EMS is all about with the disaster that took place in West. I think everybody showed exactly what EMS is all about in taking care of people who are in need. We've had a lot of people on our minds. We've had a lot of people there, people coming back, stories still coming out, things that were done. To each and every one of you in this room, whether you were involved directly or indirectly, my hat's off to you. And it just shows that we're the group that when you need help, this is a group that not only you make the call to, but the group that responds and does an absolute great job. So my hat's off to you. We met on April 12th at City of Austin Public Training Center out on Shaw. Had a very good meeting. Thanks to Jeff Hayes for allowing us and hosting the meeting. I did not bring the document with me, but one of the things that we did discuss was the web posting policy. There's now a web posting policy for us to be able to post certain items on the on the state website. Some of the reasons I think this has taken so long is we were concerned about some copyright infringement, some things that might come out that people might get the wrong idea and think this is a state-supported thought or state-supported plan or paper or whatever, and that's not the case. There were some copyright infringement issues that we wanted to make sure that we had not taken something that shouldn't be posted there. We had asked that there was a document from one of the faculty members, Jay Cloud at McLennan College, that we'd asked him to work on, and he did an excellent job. And if you go look, it's now posted. It's the transition program for EMT. If you all remember, we did the one for paramedic first because it was the hardest. Now kind of backtracking, getting that one on. It has been posted. There's some size issues as to the size of the files. Those files will stay there no longer than 2 weeks. So if we tell you there's something out for public comment, I think you can find it there, but you'll only have a 2-week window. If things come on, things come off. Otherwise, we'll end up with a lot of things there. But thank you to DSHS for finally getting that done for us. Today, item 1, setting a statewide standard for EMS certification equivalency and transfer process for EMS state programs. This is our third meeting on this particular topic. I see a couple of faces that were at the April meeting. In trying to figure out this cumbersome, complicated issue of how we award non-credit or how we award credit from non-credit institutions. The discussion pretty much concentrated on the application of hours that have been earned through non-college and private EMS education programs to college transcripts and to award these. Every time we ask every college institution, not a one was the same. Everybody had a different way of taking care of equivalency. We looked, and we did not want to recommend a single policy for colleges to award credit for non-credit based education because it really doesn't fall within our scope. I think the last thing we're going to try to do is tell the colleges how they have to award credit in their programs. One of the things that we looked at was, and some of the questions that came from the audience, and that was, what can a non-college or private EMS education program do to assist these students in achieving college credit? And we had to make sure that we made a distinction in this between equivalency and transfer. If you were transferring credits earned from an EMT program to a paramedic program and it went from college to college, there was no problem. That's just pretty much standard. That was very, very easy. Then when we looked at equivalency versus transfer, that's pretty much where the issue came in, saying that does the certification mean that the coursework you did was equivalent to get it? And the question, and the answer was no. Whether someone went through a 110-hour program, a 200-hour program, a 300-hour program, was there clinical differences, were there lab differences, were there expectations of objectives that needed to be met? So I think very quickly, several committee members suggested that we followed the WECM, which is the Workforce Education Course Manual, which is the higher Texas education standard to meet these content hours, and that if you have a non-credit program, I thought was that if you would make sure that you attached your course calendar, any course notification documents, topics, contact hours, objectives, anything that you had, if you would give those to your students at the end of the course so that they could take those to a college or institution to prove exactly how many hours. Because if you have a student that just shows up at your door and says, yeah, I went to school here, well, how many hours was it? I don't know. How many lab hours? Because they won't know. That if you can provide that information to them, I felt like that might make that process a little bit easier. And the position statement, which was very, very short, it was one sentence. The Education Committee encouraged schools and colleges to develop a process to assist EMS education certificate holders in gaining college credit for private education and/or work experience. And that was the motion that was made by Robert Nappage, with a second from Jeff Hayes. Even though we had a quorum at that meeting, I want to bring that back to this meeting as we normally do. So if there's any discussion from committee members who were not present or discussion from the audience, we'd be more than happy to take that from committee members now. Boy, they're lively. Anyone have anything they wanted to add to that? I mean, I think we pretty much finished it during the meeting, but any public comment? Okay. Hearing none, so that we have a vote from this committee. The position statement, EMS Education Committee encourages colleges and schools to develop a process to assist the EMS certificate holder in gaining college credit for private education and work experience. Do we have a motion? Mr. Nappage, second?
Second.
Second by Mr. LeMay. Any other discussion, public or committee? Hearing none, all those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move this position statement forward to GTech. We'll also remove that from our agenda. Item 2, negotiation of contiguous state regulatory agreements by DSHS for the purpose of out-of-state clinical field experiences required by Texas EMS training programs. We have probably the last 2 to 3 meetings, this too is continuing to stay on our radar and our agenda, where we're looking at how can we as a state provide a better education process, or how can we help our comrades on the border, north, south, east, or west, that may not have clinical affiliation agreements with the people around them, that they can't get them because of size, because of number of schools, because of their administration, whatever, a multitude of things. but yet, however, can go a very short distance into another state and have that state give the student the quality clinical experience that they need. This has kind of gone back and forth. We've talked to a lot of people. We had asked for a DSHS representative to attend the last couple of meetings, and we hadn't been able to get a DSH rep there. So Don Jansky, who is legal counsel for DSHS, and I have talked. And committee, if it's okay with you guys, Mr. Jansky and I are going to meet between now and the August meeting. We will lay this out for him, because I think before we move any further, I think we as a group still need to talk about it and see what's wrong and what's right, and how can, and Eddie, if you don't mind, I'm just going to use you because you're in the room and you've been at all of these meetings, that if Eddie needs to go to Las Cruces, New Mexico, because he can get a clinical affiliation agreement signed there with them and provide a great experience. Legally, I want to know why we aren't doing it, why we can't do it, why we aren't doing it. And once we get through all that, find out what we need to do it. Because anything I think that we can do to help our education programs provide that great clinical experience is great. I don't remember which committee member, but one of the committee members made the statement, because we had been looking at this to limit it to New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, our contiguous states, if you would. And as the committee started to look, we thought, well, why limit it? If Eddie, and Eddie, I'm going to keep picking on you tell me to quit. If he can find a clinical site in Kansas, and the students can go there, and if we're looking at paramedic programs especially, those are all accredited, so kind of going back and forth, we know what the standards are. The questions I think many of us had were venue questions, liability insurance, will it cover you if you go from one state to the other? So there's still a lot of research that we need to do to figure out why this is an issue. One of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is, my contact information is on the website. If you have a program in Texas and you have someone from another state sending students to your program and you're giving them credit, will you email me and tell me who it is and let me have their contact information? And the reason that we want that is I want to contact them and say, okay, how does your state do it? Okay, and if you're doing it, that's fine. Before I meet with dishes, I would like to have some information from some other states that if it's being done, how they're doing it, so that we're not just going in saying, hi, here's a problem. If you guys know anything about most of us, we're the kind of people that like to go in with a problem solved before we go there and just figure out the nuances. So if you have students that are coming to you from another state and you're allowing them to do clinicals in Texas, which as far as this committee, we think is great. If you are, we just, what agreements do you have? What pitfalls have you had? What have you found that works? What have you found that hadn't worked? So that we can kind of put that together. And Don, I think you're in here. Are you here? Yeah. We did have this discussion earlier, and you are okay with us meeting, just you and I sit down and talk and kind of work through this. We did kind of want to do this earlier, but unfortunately, at that point, Mr. Bishop, who was our state EMS director, had left, and that probably needs to come from that position or higher. So, committee members, are you all okay with that happening? I don't want to invite everybody because then we have a meeting, and then we have a posting issue and a quorum issue. But if he and I are just having a question and answer, and then I can bring that back here. Any public comment on that?
Eddie Walker with Life EMS Academy, El Paso. I'm only concerned about this thing dragging out. This meeting with Don Jansky was supposed to occur something like at least 6 months ago or something like that, and it hasn't taken place yet. Meanwhile, I still have students that are driving over 600 miles to do clinical rotations with an EMS service. There is nothing in 773 that says students cannot do this. As a matter of fact, in 773, there is in one of the sections, I don't remember which one, says that the state can make exceptions in the event that student safety or EMS provider safety is concerned and it benefits the population of the area. In 157, EMS provider, as far as the students being on a Texas licensed EMS provider unit, it doesn't say that. All it says is must be with an EMS provider. And this needs to move forward, not just for El Paso, but for other areas of the state in which they have this same situation. And I ask that this be moved forward as quickly as possible by this committee and by the state.
Thank you, Eddie. Any other public comment? Christine, are you coming or are you just going to your seat? Okay. Okay. Committee? Eddie, we hear you loud and clear, and we will continue to do everything that we can to forward this process. I think there are some nuances that we may or may not be aware of, and whatever we can do to either find out yes we can or no we can't. I think as far as, and I'll say this openly, Eddie, you've been at several of the meetings, and you know there's no one on this committee that does not want that to happen. Everybody on this committee wants to make sure that a clinical experience is absolutely outstanding wherever it is. We just want to make sure that when you're doing it, that the bases are covered for you and for the students. So sometime between the next meeting, Mr. Jansky and I will iron out. I have about 25 questions for Mr. Jansky from a legal perspective to say, if we do this, what happens? If this happens, what happens? Where's the regulatory authority if there's an issue with a student? Those kinds of issues. So we just need to make sure that we get those ironed out. And for anybody else that has programs all over too, I think this will be for everyone. So any other comments on item 3? Or item 2, rather. Okay, moving on. Make sure. Item 3, examine medical director's committee view on the amount of oversight of students during clinical field experience of an EMS training program. Let me clear up something. At our last meeting, we did have some stakeholders who believed that the education program and the consequences of requiring a signature in a clinical contract, for example, loss of ambulance site contracts and things that we probably weren't as clear as we probably should have been, and I appreciate them bringing that to our attention. I think many times that medical director is a contract employee, and the EMS agency may not permit a contract employee to sign an agency contract. Education program actually, as we discussed, should document the communication with the field site medical director, yet a signature in a contract is probably the least effective means to do that. So this record might show a lack of communication between field site administration and field site medical directors, and requiring education programs to communicate this. Field site medical directors probably will not correct this problem. The oversight issue, certainly, if you all remember, the medical directors committee has been working on this, and it is not that we necessarily supported exactly what the medical directors were doing, but this committee supported that this being worked out. After talking to some of the stakeholders at the last meeting, we looked, and I apologize if we didn't make that clear, and I told them I would do that in this meeting. This committee will be sending a message to GTech Council if committee approves it today, and that was that we did vote on at the last meeting. The EMS Education Committee believes that the responsibility for notifying the field site medical director of students access falls within the responsibilities of the field site administration, period. And that's what this committee voted on. I believe, Kelly, you made the motion and Lori seconded, and we voted to unanimously move that forward to GTech. Committee members, any discussion on item 3? Did you have anything you want, since it was your motion?
It's real clear.
Okay. Anybody else? Any public comment?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jane. So the motion is EMS Education Committee believes that the responsibility for notifying the field site medical director of student access falls within the responsibilities of the field site administration. Motion?
I will.
Okay. Motion by Kelly. Second? Mr. Nampage. All those in favor, sign of aye. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. We'll move that to GTAC for a position statement for them and to the medical directors. Item 4, mental health education for EMS personnel. We actually tabled that because we really felt like we needed some clarification. If I remember correctly, this was related to House Bill 245, which was going to require EMS personnel to have some detention powers. And I don't know where that bill is at this time. Committee comments? Mr. Napier, did you bring that forward? Who brought that one forward? Somebody else did. Jane, is this something Dishes put on?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in the back of the room sits Miss Donna. Well, you may know what the status of it is.
Who is it?
Donna?
Ms. Welch, are you here? You're sitting way against the wall, Dinah. Come on down.
Hello, Dinah Welsh. I'm sorry, I was in the back looking something else up and don't even know what the question is here. I would
That's
be
okay,
happy
Dinah.
to answer it.
That's okay, Dinah. We didn't either. Item 4 on our agenda was mental health education for EMS personnel. Somehow I think we actually tabled that because when we looked at it, everyone looked at the other and went, what are we talking about? Are we talking for us as providers? Are we talking about this for patients? Are we talking about CISM, Jack Daniels? We had no idea what we were actually looking at. So someone said this might be related to House Bill 245. We haven't seen any movement, so we were actually going to take this off of our agenda, period, but wanted to.
I think if it is related to House Bill 245, relating to the authority of emergency room physicians and certain certified EMS professionals to hold a person believed to have a mental illness, that did die in committee last week.
Okay,
So
great. Thank you.
you can take it off your list.
Any public comment? Good. It's dead. Good. Item 4 off the list. Item 5, report on Trauma Systems Committee Registry Work Group, the TSCRW. Mr. Creech?
Yes, we've had.
John, can you get closer and make sure it's on? And
I usually don't. It's okay?
Nope.
It's not on. There you go. That better? All right, we've started. We've had 3 phone calls, committee meetings on this. Our first committee meeting in person will be tomorrow at 11:30 here. Basically, what we've been doing is just getting some short-term goals together and looking at some action items. So basically, it's a lot of stuff on the phone, but I think we're fixing to find out tomorrow where we're really going with this.
okay, great. Thank you. Committee, any questions for Mr. Creech? Public, any questions for Mr. Creech? Reference the Trauma Systems Committee Registry Work Group? None? Okay, thank you. Item 6, GTAC Committee and Council meetings schedule changes. Ms. Guerrero. Okay. While Jane's coming over, in our GTAC retreat, council members looked at some alternatives for a 3-day GTAC meeting. Let me throw two things out there immediately. One, there was nothing that said that the current standard wasn't working or that the 3 days was wrong or that we didn't want to do it. There'd been some rumblings from some people saying, boy, if we could shorten this, because of my budget, it might be easier and it might be better. Being one of those council members, I agreed completely and said if we can shorten this to a shorter process and make it a 2-day process, it's fine. I don't think anyone has said that the current option is off the table. If we stay with a 3-day meeting schedule, certainly we understood that there were a lot of other things to consider, such as TTAF, such as the RAC work groups that are not necessarily part of GTAC but are scheduled at the same time because those same people are here already for those meetings. Jane, do you want to go over this as we go and give everybody the perspective, if you don't mind?
Okay, we have 5 tentative schedules put together that we're going to review. First of all the schedules begin with a 1-hour GTAC meeting, so the council meets first. All of the schedules allow for 10 committee meetings. They begin with day 2 at 8 a.m. on all the schedules and end with a 2-hour GTAC meeting at the end of all the committee meetings. So you have a GTAC meeting to start off the committee meetings, followed by 10 committee meetings. Then we close with a 2-hour GTAC meeting. The thinking of the first hour of GTAC meetings, we would get the state reports out of the way. One of the things that will help is that all of the committees that are present will get to hear the same information the same way each time. You'll hear the chair's report, and then the committees would break up and go into their committee sessions. Okay. So the first schedule, option A. Now, what the council has asked is that the committee rank these in order. In other words, your first preference or option choice through your last. So 1 through 5 is what you're going to be ranking them as. Option A on day 1, GTAC, the council, begins a 1-hour meeting at 1 o'clock. It runs for an hour. Then you have 4 consecutive meetings after that for an hour. And you'll notice that there's no assignment. It's committee A, B, C, D. That could be any committee. Day 2, we start at 8 a.m. with committee meetings. We do not break for lunch. It is lunch would be a working meeting, so council committee members could bring their lunch in. And then we would conclude on day 2 with the GTAC council meeting from 2 to 4. So then the next option, option B, again, day 1 begins at 1 o'clock with a 1-hour GTAC followed by the committee meetings. And these are 50-minute meetings that allows a 10-minute turnover. The day concludes at 5:50, almost 6 o'clock. Day 2 begins again at 8 a.m., again with 50-minute committee meetings, and it goes to concludes with the GTAC meeting, a 2-hour meeting again from 2 to 4. Okay, option C. Day 1 is beginning earlier. So we begin at 10 a.m. with the GTAC meeting. We again have 4 committee meetings that day, but these committee meetings are different in that they are an hour and a half versus the hour on the previous 2 selections. Again, we are not, we do break for lunch on this between 12:30 and 1:30. You have a lunch break, and then we conclude at 6 p.m. Day 2 begins at 8 a.m. Again, you have the rest of your committee meetings on that day, which is with 6 committee meetings. And we conclude on day 2 with a GTech meeting from that's 6 to 8. So the second day concludes at 8 p.m. Option D. Day 1 begins earlier. We begin at 9 o'clock with the GTech meeting that runs for an hour. And then we have 5 committee meetings on day 1. We do take a lunch break, and we conclude at 5:30 on day 1. Day 2 again begins at 8 a.m. with another 5 committee meetings with a lunch break, and we conclude at 6:30. Final option, option E. Day 1 begins the earliest, 8:30 to 9:30 for GTAC. Then we have 5 committee meetings with a 1-hour lunch break. Day 1 concludes at 5 p.m. Day 2 begins at 8 a.m. We have 5 committee meetings. These are hour-and-a-half committee meetings on both days. Concluding day 2 with a 2-hour GTAC council meeting that concludes at 5 p.m. And this final slide is a summary so that you can kind of see across the board how the meeting schedule works.
Jane, can we go back one, Andrew? Was it intended for committee B and C to both be 1 hour or hour and a half?
That's an excellent
And
question.
Jay and I also.
It,
5 1-hour meetings and 5 hour
there.
Yeah.
So on option D, there are 2 1-hour committee meetings, and there are 8 1.5-hour meetings. In option E, there are 5 1.5-hour committee meetings, and there are 5 1-hour committee meetings.
Correct.
I guess your committee decides how much time you need to pick a slot.
This is multiple choice at its best. I think that in one option that is not there is that things remain as they are. So committee members, I will take what you want to GTAC on Friday. Now that you've had a good 30, 45 seconds to digest it and figure out which one you want. No, this decision is not up to me. I will take this decision back to GTAC Council. Whatever time it is, I'll be here. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. My boss said I would be here, so I'll be here. I have E on this side of the table.
I think E seems the most flexible.
Yeah. So are we saying option E is 1? Okay.
And B is 2.
I would say that option C is probably the last one.
So I'm hearing option D, number 2 on the left side of the table. Dr. Gonzalez? He can't.
Well, because that still gives us the option to have a
I say D.
D gives us the option to have we never do an hour and a half.
Right side of the table, D, option 2. Okay.
3 because of the amount of time for meetings.
So I'm hearing B and C over here and B over here.
C would be my last choice because C requires everybody to have an hour and a half meeting, and that's just, not everybody needs that.
Okay, you all agree with C being number 5 then?
Yes.
Okay.
Not everybody needs an hour and a half.
C at number 5, so we still need option 3 and 4.
I like B, the 10 minutes, 50 minutes, right?
Sure, whichever.
So B is option 3?
Yes.
By the process of elimination, that makes number 4. Okay.
10 minutes travel.
Slide that over there.
So, committee members, what we're hearing is E is option 1, D is option 2, B as in boy is option 3, A is option 4, and C is option 5. Any,
The current format.
okay. Yeah, say that a little louder, so, 'cause I just want it on the record.
I'm good with the current format.
Okay. I think that's something that we have to ask this committee. These are the 5 options that we're being asked, or is the current one really your number 1? Oscar?
Look, for me,
Mhm.
Can you hear me? Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
For us that travel, it's going to be a 3-day anyway. Okay, so the current format for us work, coming from El Paso. Even E and Delta, D, we're spending 3 days here. It's either we're staying here late and trying to catch a plane back, or we come in early and try to make the meetings. So for us is, the only thing I don't like about B is that, I mean, we're crunching the time of the meetings into 50 minutes. So it's going to be hurry up and look at the clock and hurry up. And that may be an issue with the meetings, that you may not have the quality of the meetings that you want. So I just ask to look at all the options and make sure that whatever you're looking at, people are going to fight for some of those 1.5 hour meetings. There's some committees that may not need all the 1.5 hour meetings, but we need to make that, take that in consideration too. That's my thing on this thing is people that travel are probably going to spend 3 days anyway.
Okay. Comments from this side of the table? Committee, would it be appropriate, and I'm going to ask this, if the current option is the one this committee still wants, I need to be able to tell council that Friday. And then also say, but if we're not going to keep the current one, is this the structure that we're looking at? Is that fairly appropriate? I think that's what I'm kind of hearing, is that the one we have is okay, but if we're going to change it, this is the order. So committee, I guess we need a motion. Okay. What is your motion?
I'm going to motion to recommend the current one as the first choice, and then the secondary is, they don't accept it, the secondary. Is that
Okay.
fair? Okay.
So the motion is to keep the current schedule, but if that is not available, the options that we discussed today will be presented to GTech.
Yes.
Okay. We have motion, we have second. Committee discussion?
Who made the second?
Robert? No? Any public comment?
I just want to say one thing about the logistics behind this. B is the only one here that's realistic. You're going to have a 10-minute break between each of these anyway. You might as well build it in the schedule.
Any other public comment? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So for our meeting today, we've looked at equivalency. We will take the position statement to GTech on Friday that encourages schools to develop a process to assist certificate holders in gaining college credit from private education and/or work experience. We will set up a meeting that will happen between Mr. Jansky and I sometime for item 2 between now and the next GTech meeting. The stakeholders, we apologize to them and change that education program committee believes that responsibility for notifying the field site medical director of student access falls within the responsibilities of the field site administration. Item 4, we deleted period. Item 5, we had a report from Mr. Creech on the workforce. And we will present today to keep the current option, but if that's not available, E becomes option 1, D option 2, B as in boy option 3, A as in option 4, and C as in option 5. Hey, Jane, can we talk about what you and I talked about on the phone? Okay, good. We have been, there have been a couple of committee members, including myself, have been asked about medical director courses. This committee has helped sponsor one at the last couple of conferences. And if anyone needs one, we are just about to put the finishing touches on another one that we will be doing through the conference. When I contacted Jane to make sure that the one that we did was approved by DISHES, and it was, and the new one will be. So I just wanted to put that one out there so that you will see details about that coming up soon. Committee, any announcements?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This week is Police Officers Week. Today is Half-Staff Day, or Memorial Day for police officers. So if you get a chance, just tell a brother in dark blue you appreciate what they're doing. Thanks.
When is EMS week?
Next week.
Okay.
Brothers in light blue.
That's right, brothers in dark blue and brothers and sisters in light blue. Any other announcements from committee? Any other public announcements? Hey, Jane.
Good morning. Jane Densmore, PERCOM. I don't know if anybody else saw this, but to me it raised some red flags of a possible issue that's on our horizon here in EMS education. There was an article, and it came out on Fox News, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, but it was about a medical school in New Jersey that was in the middle of a case because they had basically thrown a couple of medical students out of medical school because they couldn't go to rotations because they were Hep B positive. And in this case, what came out is the U.S. Department of Justice recently declared in a legal settlement that hepatitis B patients are protected by federal disability law. Separately, federal health officials have issued a revised set of guidelines that make it clear that healthcare workers and students who carry the hepatitis B virus generally pose little or no risk to patients. And in this article, it released a statement by Dr. John Ward from the CDC that said the last set of guidelines that were released last summer were cited by the Justice Department in March as the agency announced their settlement, basically saying that it sends a powerful message that in a great majority of clinical encounters between a healthcare provider and a patient, there is minimal or no risk of hepatitis B virus transmission. I looked up the ADA and looked for exemptions in the ADA in relation to public health and safety, and it says specifically that it's only as if there is a significant risk to public health and safety that cannot be minimized by other means, and the CDC is saying there's minimal risk. The problem that I see here is the way that I believe our statute is set up on what we have to have for vaccinations for our students to even go into rotations. We're requiring them to have their hepatitis B vaccines. If they come to you and say, well, I'm hepatitis B positive, where does that leave us? Well, you get the titer, but just because they're hepatitis B positive, I mean, the rule doesn't say that. The rule says they have to have the hepatitis B vaccine. So where does that leave us when we have students that hospitals are not going to really want in there? And I would say, based on the way we're currently structured, but we can't throw them out either. You know, we're kind of stuck with the way it's worded. So I'm just curious to where that leaves us in relation to the statute. Is this something that we need to address? Is this something we need to get out? Because apparently this is now becoming an issue.
Okay. Any other public comment? Any other announcements? Committee at our last meeting brought to our attention that it's probably time for us to take a look at the education training manual again. All those in favor of never touching it again? No. We're going to have to. Yes. So at our next meeting for agenda items, one will be the education training manual. We need to take another look at that too. Phil, are you here? Would you like to be at that meeting too? Could you be at that meeting if we set it at a... Okay. Okay, I think your input would be valuable in that because you're the key holder pretty much to the ETM. So, ETM, Hep B. What else for the next agenda? Anybody? Any committee members have anything that's? It'll be done by then. Location, and date. Are you all thinking July, as in end of July?
It needs to be 30 days before our next meeting for the business, so.
Yeah.
I say Houston. We'd love to have you guys down to Houston.
Houston?
Is Houston still voting? Is Houston still voting?
Yeah, they're still
Whatever we do in that meeting, we'll just report in our August meeting. So 26th in July. It's a Friday. Huh? I'm sorry, Deidre, what? Where? Where? We can meet in Corpus then. So we have the 26th of July. Anyone have any heartburn with that one? Okay. Location, we've heard Houston and we've heard Austin.
Austin's in the middle.
Committee members, if you would, all those in favor of Austin, just raise your hand. Gary, are you, okay. All those in favor of Houston? Okay, we'll be in Austin. 9A to 3P. I will get with Mr. Hayes. And, you know, Kelly, with the next one, we'll just try to come to Houston. How about that? Okay. You know, what happened was, no, we have been to that discussion on Skyping, and no. But you're welcome to come, or we'll, you know. So our next meeting, July 26, 9 a.m., somewhere here in Austin. We'll get that posted and get that one done very, very quickly. Mr. Creech, you'll have some more information for us at that time from the trauma work group, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Like I said, Jody, we're having our official face-to-face meeting from 11:30 to 1:30 in a room somewhere around here.
Okay. There was some discussion too, an open forum at our last meeting about critical care paramedic education and how it's not regulated. And the Medicare language we don't think was very helpful. I think, well, the committee was asked pretty much if we wanted to endorse a specific education program, and it was emphatic. This committee said no, we're not going to endorse any, and felt like, Dudley, are you here? I saw you earlier. Step out. That's Dustin. Just tell him we're going to make him do something he doesn't even know it's going to happen yet. We think this topic might be addressed better by the EMS committee first. So I'll pass that on to Dudley. And then another question was, is there a need for a community health certification course? Lots of discussion looking at whether community health education should be included in the initial education curriculum. So I think you'll probably hear a little bit more of this as things like advanced practice paramedic and advanced community paramedic, and these things seem to be taking hold and moving forward. We'll be working on those also. So, Mr. Nappage?
Jody, I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Has committee members, could we sit through and audit the coordinator course at the conference?
That would be
Who
a
would be-
question.
who would be the person to ask?
I'm seeing Mr. Hart shake his head.
Okay.
No.
Good deal. Thanks.
Okay. Yes. Hey, Dudley. We had been, critical care paramedic education came up as not being regulated, and the Medicare language we looked at was not very helpful when talking to it. This committee emphatically said we did not want to endorse a particular critical care program, and it thought maybe this was best addressed by the EMS committee. So we're not asking you to address it. We're just saying that, hi, it was discussed in ours, and that any thought you had on critical care programs, which ones are working, which ones aren't. If it's something you guys wanted to look at, fine. If not, we're good. Okay.
We'll listen and
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we all feel the same way. We just we'll let that one be.
that scares me. I'm just saying.
Anything else? All hearts and minds clear? Need a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.